I still remember that night like it happened yesterday. The rain was falling hard, tapping against my window like it wanted to tell me something I refused to listen to back then. If someone had told me that the person who would destroy my peace would come from inside my own family, I would have laughed. But life has a strange way of revealing truths, slowly, painfully, like pulling a thorn buried deep in your skin. My name is Adil, and this is the story of how my own stepsister, Sarah, tried to steal the only person I ever truly loved, my fiancée, Mina, and how my revenge ended up costing me far more than I ever imagined. Back then, everything felt perfect. I had a stable job at a local software firm, a small rented house in the city, and a beautiful fiancée who made my world brighter every day. Mina was kind, gentle, and had this calm way of speaking that made even the worst days feel okay. Sarah, my stepsister, had moved in with us just a few months earlier. After my father passed away, my stepmother left for her hometown, and Sarah didn't have anywhere else to go. I couldn't say no. She was family, after all. She was younger than me by 3 years, full of energy and charm, and everyone around seemed to like her instantly. Even Mina. At first, it was all normal. We'd laugh at dinner, share stories, sometimes even all go out together on weekends. But somewhere in between those moments of laughter, something started to shift. I noticed small things, the way Sarah would compliment Mina too much, or the way she'd watch me when I wasn't looking. I brushed it off. Maybe I was overthinking, but deep down, my gut whispered that something was wrong. One evening, as I came home early from work, I overheard laughter from the living room. Mina and Sarah were sitting together, scrolling through photos on Mina's phone. "Wow, you two look so perfect," Sarah said. "I wish I could find someone like Adil." Mina laughed. You're beautiful, and you know how to make people fall for you." Sarah smiled, but it wasn't a simple smile. It was the kind of smile that hides something behind it. Envy, maybe. Or something darker. That night, I couldn't sleep. I told myself I was being paranoid. She's my sister, for God's sake. But the feeling wouldn't go away. I didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of the storm. A storm that would soon destroy everything I loved. Life before the storm felt simple. I would wake up to the smell of tea in the morning, the soft hum of Mina singing in the kitchen, and the quiet chatter of Sarah scrolling on her phone somewhere in the house. I remember our weekends most vividly. Mina and I would walk through the small parks near our apartment, hand in hand, laughing at nothing in particular. Those walks were my escape from a world that often felt too heavy, too fast, too unfair. I thought I had everything I could ever want. Mina's laughter, her gentle teasing, the way she'd squeeze my hand whenever I looked worried. It all made me feel like I was the luckiest man alive. Even at work, I was content. My colleagues respected me, and I had a stable salary. It wasn't much, but it was honest, and it was enough for the life I wanted to build with Mina. Sarah's presence in the house, I accepted it as part of the deal. She was charming. She smiled at everyone. She could light up a room just by walking in. And yes, I'll admit, there were times when I enjoyed her company. Her laughter was infectious, and sometimes she would join Mina and me for dinner, telling stories that made us all laugh. But then, slowly, the small cracks began to show. It started with tiny comments from Sarah. "You two are perfect together. Adil, she's lucky to have you. Don't forget to tell her how much you care. Adil women like that need it." On the surface, they sounded harmless, but there was a subtle tension in her words, like she was planting ideas in my mind, or maybe testing boundaries. And Mina, she didn't notice. She was too trusting, too open, too innocent, which made Sarah's manipulations easier. I started noticing the little things. The way Sarah would brush past me, lingering too long near Mina. The way she'd laugh at Mina's jokes, but also add something flirty, something I couldn't quite place. And the worst part, I caught myself doubting my own feelings. Was I imagining things? Was my mind playing tricks? I wanted to believe that Sarah was harmless, just a girl trying to find her place in a new family. But my gut was screaming otherwise. One evening, Mina and I were sitting on the balcony, watching the sunset. I thought about our life, about our plans, a small wedding next year, maybe moving into our own place, maybe a dog, maybe a tiny apartment filled with laughter. I turned to her, smiling, and said, "You know, I feel like nothing can ever go wrong between us." She smiled back, eyes sparkling. Nothing ever could Adil. Little did I know, those words would haunt me. Because the first signs of betrayal were already creeping into our perfect world. Unnoticed, silent, but deadly. I first realized Sarah's envy wasn't subtle anymore one ordinary evening. We were all sitting in the living room, Mina on the couch scrolling through her phone, me at the small dining table, and Sarah leaning against the wall. With that look that said she wanted something she couldn't have. It started with little comments that felt innocent but carried weight. "Wow, Mina really loves you, huh? She's always talking about you." On the surface, it was just conversation. But I could see the way Sarah's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then she added softly, "Sometimes I wonder, does she appreciate how lucky she is to have you?" I froze. I didn't know why, but her words felt like tiny knives, each one aiming at the foundation of the life I had built. I tried to brush it off. Maybe she was just trying to tease, just trying to be friendly. But over the next few weeks, the subtle tension grew. Sarah started asking more questions about Mina and me, about our future, our plans, even our arguments. I caught her glancing at us when we talked, as if she was studying our every move, memorizing our habits, learning our weaknesses. It wasn't just words. Her actions started to bother me too. Sarah would sit a little too close to Mina, laugh a little too loudly at her jokes, and offer help that Mina never asked for. And Mina, as kind as she was, seemed to welcome it. She never noticed the way Sarah's eyes lingered a second too long, or the way her hand accidentally brushed Mina's while handing her a book or phone. I tried to ignore it. I told myself, it's family, nothing more. But the pit in my stomach kept growing. I couldn't shake the feeling that something dangerous was happening right under my nose, something that would destroy everything I loved. Then came the night that confirmed my worst fears. I came home early from work, just an hour earlier than usual. I had wanted to surprise Mina, maybe bring her favorite dessert, but as I opened the door, the laughter that met me, it wasn't the warm, happy kind. It was hushed, conspiratorial, almost guilty. I followed the sound to the living room. There they were, Mina and Sarah, sitting side by side on the couch, whispering and giggling. I froze at the doorway. My chest tightened. Sarah looked up at me, perfectly innocent. "Adil, you're home early." Mina smiled warmly. We were just talking. But the way they looked at each other, the shared smile, the secret glance, I knew deep down that Sarah had crossed a line. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the scene in my head, every word, every glance. My heart ached, not just for Mina, but for the life I thought I had. I realized then that Sarah's envy wasn't harmless anymore. It was growing into something dangerous, and I had no idea how far she was willing to go, or how much she could destroy. It all happened so slowly that I didn't notice it at first. Sarah's jealousy had transformed into something I could no longer ignore. Small things at first, lingering glances, accidental touches, late-night calls, but soon, the cracks in my perfect life started to widen, exposing a betrayal I never imagined. One evening, I came home to an empty house. Mina wasn't there yet, and Sarah was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. I greeted her, trying to keep the tension from showing. "Hey, how was your day?" I asked casually. Sarah looked up with that smile again, the one I had begun to hate. "Oh, it was fine. Just talking to some friends," she said, hiding her phone behind her back. I didn't push, but my gut screamed at me. The next day, Mina told me she had met a friend of Sarah's at a cafe. She smiled and said, "She's really nice. I think you'd like her, Adil." Something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself I was imagining things, but the feeling of unease wouldn't leave. Then came the weekend. I had planned a special date for Mina, just the two of us. But when I came home to pick her up, Sarah was waiting by the door. "Hey, you're going out?" she asked casually. "Yeah, just a small dinner with Mina," I replied. Sarah tilted her head, smiling sweetly. "Oh, I see. Well, have fun, I guess," she said. But there was a sharpness in her tone, a quiet warning, almost as if she was already claiming her victory. The night that changed everything arrived without warning. I came home early from work, hoping to surprise Mina as usual. What I saw broke my heart in ways I didn't think possible. Mina and Sarah were sitting close together on the couch, whispering. Sarah's hand rested lightly on Mina's shoulder, and Mina laughed at something Sarah said. But it wasn't the innocent laughter I knew. It was different. Forced, nervous, almost guilty. When I stepped into the room, both of them froze. Sarah's smile was sharp, almost triumphant. Mina's eyes widened, confusion, fear, guilt all mingled together. I tried to speak, to ask what was happening, but the words caught in my throat. I wanted to believe it wasn't true. I wanted to believe that Sarah wasn't trying to take away the only person I loved. But my heart knew the truth before my mind could accept it. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I had trusted both of them. I had believed in family, in love, in honesty, and now it was all slipping through my fingers. I realized something I couldn't ignore any longer. Sarah wasn't just jealous. She was actively trying to steal Mina from me. And for the first time in my life, anger and hurt collided into something I had never felt before: the burning desire for revenge. I couldn't sleep that night, not because of insomnia, but because my mind refused to stop replaying what I had seen. Mina, my Mina, the woman I had promised my life to. Was she really slipping away from me, inch by inch, because of Sarah? I felt a storm inside me, heartbreak, anger, confusion, betrayal, all colliding. I kept asking myself, how could she? How could my own family do this to me? I tried talking to Mina the next morning. I asked her casually, carefully, "Did Sarah say anything to you yesterday?" She looked at me with wide, innocent eyes. No, why? Did I do something wrong? Her voice cracked slightly, and my heart sank. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that Sarah had been lying, manipulating, twisting words behind my back. But every instinct I had screamed the opposite. Days turned into weeks, and the tension at home became unbearable. Sarah's behavior grew bolder. She would linger around Mina when I wasn't looking, whisper jokes and stories that only the two of them would understand. She would laugh in ways that drew Mina's attention, almost like she was daring me to notice. I could no longer ignore it. The pain of watching the person I loved drift away from me was too much. It was like watching my entire world crumble, piece by piece, and being powerless to stop it. One night, I sat in the dark, staring at the walls of my room, thinking. I realized I had two choices. Let this continue, let Sarah destroy my relationship and my life. Fight back, find a way to reclaim what was mine. I didn't want to act recklessly. I didn't want to ruin Mina's trust or push her away, but I couldn't stay passive either. The anger inside me grew sharp and precise, like a blade ready to strike. I felt it awaken a side of me I hadn't known existed, the side that could plan, wait, and strike when the time was right. I started observing Sarah more carefully. Every smile, every word, every gesture was recorded in my mind. I needed to understand her to find her weakness, her vulnerability. Because if I wanted to protect Mina, I had to outsmart Sarah. That week, I confronted the harsh truth. Sarah had already begun planting seeds of doubt in Mina's mind. Small, almost invisible manipulations. A casual compliment here. A whispered story there. A text Mina didn't think much of. And Mina, she was too kind, too trusting, too polite to see through it. I couldn't blame her, but I also couldn't let her slip away. I promised myself something that night, a promise I knew I might regret. I would fight. I would reclaim my love. And Sarah, she would pay the price for what she had tried to take from me. When I say I planned revenge, it sounds dramatic, like something out of a movie. But the truth was quieter, smaller, and infinitely more dangerous, because it didn't start with fireworks. It started with observation, with patience, with tiny moves that looked harmless until they weren't. First, I had to stop feeling like a victim. Anger was useful, but it could also burn everything to ash if I let it. So I turned that anger into focus. I made lists. I wrote down every moment that had felt off, every suspicious text, every odd excuse. My notebook became a map of betrayals, small notes in a neat hand. April 12th, late work call. Sarah laughed when Mina left the room. May 3rd, Mina asked about new opportunities. Little arrows, underlines names, circled. I started with the easiest thing, evidence, not for the sake of exposing someone publicly, not yet, but to stop the endless swirl of doubt that ate at me at night. If I could show Mina something she couldn't deny, maybe she would see it. Maybe she would come back. So I watched. I learned Sarah's rhythm. I watched her phone habits, The way she left it face down on the table, the times she slipped away to talk quietly. I didn't want to invade Mina's privacy or lie to her. I only wanted the truth. What surprised me was how small vulnerabilities revealed themselves. Sarah was proud, loud when she needed to be. But she was also careless with certain things. She loved being admired. She loved attention. And that gave me openings. The plan had parts. I didn't tell anyone. Revenge is dangerous. When it's loud, it needs to be quiet, exact, like an arrow finding a target. Step 1. Isolate the pattern. I kept note of when Sarah texted, who she called, and where she claimed to be. I learned which of her friends she used as alibis. I traced the few people she confided in, usually for sympathy, rarely for help. She had one close friend from university who believed anything Sarah said. I quietly found ways to observe their interactions, not stalk, just be present in the moments that mattered. Step 2. Small, controlled exposures. This wasn't about humiliating Sarah in public. It was about creating moments where Mina would see what I saw. A confrontation from me would feel biased. Evidence through natural moments would feel harder to dismiss. So, I started arranging coincidences. I suggested simple, unremarkable plans where the three of us would be in the same place. Casual dinners, movie nights, things that sounded like normal life. I learned how Sarah moved in social situations, how she leaned in when Mina was quiet, how she would find reasons to be alone with her. Each time, I made sure someone else was close enough to notice and act. A neighbor, a colleague, someone whose casual remark could later be remembered. Step 3. The mirror. People often do things they would never admit to because they think no one will watch. But if you show them themselves, if you hold up a mirror of their actions, they sometimes crumble. I needed Mina to see Sarah's reflection, not through my eyes, but through situations where Sarah's actions would reflect back at her. I remember one evening clearly. Mina and I had gone to the market. I forgot my wallet and asked Sarah to come along to lend a hand. The three of us walked through narrow stalls, and Sarah slipped into a small shop with Mina to look at scarves. They lingered longer than necessary. The shopkeeper, an old woman who had known Mina since childhood, later mentioned to me, casually, that she had seen Sarah putting her hand on Mina's shoulder in a way that made Mina blush. The old woman's tone was neutral, the kind of gossip that isn't meant to hurt, but it lodged in Mina's mind. Step 4. The seed of doubt carefully placed. I never lied. I never manufactured texts or calls. I used real moments and let them accumulate like drops, wearing away a stone. If Mina noticed one small thing, that would not be enough. But if she noticed several independent things, a joke, an accidental touch, a pattern of being left out of private conversations, the pattern would emerge. There was a risk. Every plan has a cost. The more I watched, the more my life narrowed into observations and silent nights. There were times I felt monstrous for reducing our home to a field of traps and tests. I would stand in the kitchen while Mina laughed in the other room and feel like a stranger in my own life. That's the paradox of revenge. You gain tactics, but you lose parts of yourself. I used social media in small, quiet ways. Sarah loved attention on her posts. The likes and comments fueled her. I began to interact in ways that would show up to others, but not to her. A friend's polite comment on a shared photo. A congratulatory message that referenced a moment only the three of us had watched. It was subtle, but it placed small mirrors around Sarah, making her displays of charm less private and more visible. There were tiny victories. One night, a mutual friend mentioned to Mina that Sarah had spoken about making moves. Mina's face went pale. For the first time, I saw the confusion and doubt replace the trust in her eyes. She looked at me, searching for answers. I didn't speak. I wanted her to find her own truth. But revenge is a teacher and a thief. It teaches you how to win, and it steals your peace. The more I planned, the more I felt hollow. I started missing the simple things. Mina's unguarded smile, the way she hummed while cooking, the warmth of ordinary mornings. I found myself rehearsing scenes where I would expose Sarah and Mina would run into my arms, everything fixed. Real life is not a rehearsal, and reality rarely follows a script. Then, a mistake. Someone noticed my questions, a friend who asked too many obvious questions, an awkward glance that gave away my surveillance. I had underestimated how watching affects others. Suddenly, whispers started. Sarah grew cautious. She stopped being careless. and that changed everything. One night, in the quiet that comes just before midnight, I realized revenge was no longer a strategy. It had become an obsession. I was measuring the minutes of the day by when Sarah left the house, who she spoke to, what she did. I had crossed a line where my actions could harm Mina as much as they could harm Sarah. I had to be careful, not because of the law, but because of what revenge could do to the one I loved. So I slowed. I took a breath. I recentered my plan around one principle. Show, don't tell. Let the truth accumulate until it could not be denied. My goal was not to destroy a person. It was to bring hidden things into the light. And somewhere between arranging small moments and holding my silence, something shifted in me. I was no longer just a hurt man wanting justice. I was becoming someone who could hurt back, and that frightened me more than any betrayal ever could. The night I planned to end it all, not with violence, but with a revelation. Everything felt impossibly small and impossibly large at the same time. Small, because it was only our tiny living room, 1 lamp, 3 chairs. Large, because the truth I had gathered over months would finally stand up and demand to be seen. I invited Mina's closest friends under the pretense of a simple celebration, a small get-together before my promotion. I said, because it sounded normal and people would come. I told only those I trusted, the ones who had seen the odd moments I'd pointed out, the neighbors and the aunt who had overheard Sarah's careless flattery. I asked them to sit quietly and act casual, to be the background, not the show. Sarah arrived late, glowing as always, hair perfectly arranged, a smile painted on. She gave me a look I couldn't read, surprise, maybe suspicion, maybe triumph. Mina walked in holding a small plate of snacks, bright as a summer afternoon, unaware that the air in the room smelled of something else entirely. I had prepared a simple slideshow on my laptop, nothing dramatic, just a sequence of photos, timestamps, screenshots, and messages that showed patterns I had kept in my notebook. I didn't alter or fake anything. That was my rule. Let the truth do the work. When the moment came, I cleared my throat. There's something I need everyone to see, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I need Mina to see this too. I hit play. The images flicked across the screen, Mina and Sarah together in a cafe, texts with coy words, selfies where Sarah leaned in closer than necessary. There were times stamped late at night, locations that matched Mina's routine, and messages where Sarah wrote things that, when read plainly, suggested she craved something Mina had, not money or status, but affection, attention, intimacy. At first, people murmured. Then a neighbor whispered. Then the aunt gasped. Mina's hand moved to her mouth. Her eyes tracked each photo as if trying to catch a mistake. Sarah shifted in her chair, then smiled the way a trapped animal might try to look friendly. When the slideshow ended, the room felt like a held breath. Mina looked at me, a look that searched for explanation, for reason, for any lie that could make this less devastating. I opened my mouth, but the words I planned in my head suddenly tasted bitter. I had wanted this to be a bridge, a way back to honesty. Instead, it felt like a breaking. Why would you do this? Mina asked, voice small but steady. Why would you show all this in front of everyone? Why did you collect it like evidence against me? Her question hit me harder than any insult. She wasn't staring at Sarah anymore. She was staring at me. Sarah's face changed then. The cleverness slipped. She wasn't triumphant in public anymore. She was cornered. She tried to laugh it off, the old practiced chuckle, and said, "A deal, you're making it a scene. These are just moments. People have friendships." But the warmth in her voice had gone cold. There was a defensiveness that tasted like fear. Mina stood up so fast, the chair scraped. Tears welled in her eyes. Is this why you've been hiding? Watching us. Spying on me. Her words were not only for Sarah, they were for me. And the room closed in a way I had not expected. I wanted to tell her the truth. I wanted to explain that I'd only ever wanted to protect our love. I wanted to tell her how every look Sarah gave made something inside me tremble. I wanted to say that I had hoped this would bring her back, but the truth sounded hollow in my mouth. For months I had been acting in the shadows, and now the shadows had become my accusation against her. How could I ask Mina to forgive a man who had betrayed her privacy to prove someone else's betrayal? The confrontation was messy, as confrontations always are. Mina walked to Sarah and asked, voice shaking, "Why did you do it, Sarah? Why did you try to take him?" Sarah looked at Mina like she had been caught in a game, but still expected applause. Mina, I didn't mean to hurt you. I was lonely. Her admission was thin and selfish, but it was a confession, and confession has weight. The people in the room argued quietly. Some took Mina's side, some were stunned into silence. But in the middle of the chaos, Mina turned away from Sarah and looked at me again. "And you?" she asked. "How could you watch me? How could you keep this and bring it here as if I needed proof of my own life?" Those questions broke something within me that no evidence could ever fix. Yes, I had exposed the betrayer. Yes, I had forced the truth into the light. But in doing so, I had also exposed my own hands. The same hands that had once held Mina tenderly now held the tools of surveillance. I had become both judge and spy. She didn't scream. She didn't cry loudly. She simply gathered her things with a careful, quiet motion and walked out. There was no dramatic slam of the door. There didn't need to be. The silence that followed her leaving was louder than any outburst. People left soon after. Sarah sat in the empty room, the echoes of conversation bouncing off the walls like small stones. She had been seen, and being seen was punishment enough for her. Neighbors whispered behind cupped hands. Some people avoided eye contact. A reputation once built can be broken in a few moments, but a relationship once broken does not always mend the same way. Outside, the night was cold. I stepped onto the balcony, and the city lights blurred into a smear of indifferent stars.